Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Monday, June 7th, and this is virtual lunch number 320. Our guest today is David Jargiello, who is a partner with the VLP Law Group. He also serves as the firm's general counsel and chair of its professional responsibility and risk management practice group. And this is part of our continuing series on empowering engagement with Joinder. Hi, David. How you doing?
Afternoon. Thank you for having me.
David, let's start. Can you tell us about your background and your practice at VLP Law Group?
Sure. I'm a corporate finance, corporate securities, venture capital lawyer by training. That's still my primary area of practice. It's where most of my work comes from. I also am the law firm general counsel, and I've been a law firm general counsel for many, many, many years now over the firms I've been in. When I was a new associate in the early 90s, I started my career at Wilson Sonsini, general corporate securities, IPOs, M&A deals. I've done all those things. And we started this little law firm up on Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park called Venture Law Group. And the earth-shattering concept of Venture Law Group was nobody's name was in it. It's Venture Law Group. We are going to be a mainstream, big-time law firm doing big-time work with nobody's names. We had an acorn as a logo. And people thought that was just lunacy. Certainly the first week of our operations at Venture Law Group, the founder of the firm said, not only are we not going to have names, we had a logo and we're rolling, we're going to go public. And I was the guy who was young enough to blunder into saying, there's laws about that. I don't think we can do that. It's a true story that pegged me as the guy with a good head on his shoulders about risk management and legal ethics. And in that moment crystallized a whole separate area of practice, which I continue today. Ever since that moment, I've had this legal ethics, professional responsibility because we were a law firm. And ultimately, the role was one of manager of the risk of the business enterprise. How do we manage the risk that presents us on a day-to-day basis? And our secret sauce at the time was risk management tends to have this view of defensive and naysayers and no, you can't do that. From the very earliest days, the conception of it was, no, this is a profit center. We need to find out where the landmines are in our business so that we can walk through the minefield to a high return end, taking what is perceived perhaps by outsiders to be high risk, but it's not really because we've thought it through strategically. Currently, I'm a partner at a firm called VLP Law Group. So you might notice the similarity, Venture Law Group, VLG, VLP Law Group. A large overlap of the same people started a second law firm in 2008, and the same founder, a gentleman by the name of Craig Johnson, contacted me in 2007 when I was at another firm, and he said, when was the last time anybody came to your office? And I said, nobody comes to my office, ever. We're going to do a firm with no offices, zero. Our address is going to be the UPS box downtown Palo Alto, which it still is, by the way. We started a new firm, went full virtual, opened in 2008. And I remain a corporate securities, corporate finance lawyer with a full-on parallel practice in areas of legal ethics, risk management for law firms, but also enterprise risk management for businesses, which is morphed into over the years. And it's interesting. And I retain that philosophy from the various earliest days, which is about preventing problems and increasing profitability, not about necessarily avoiding risk. It's about identifying and managing risk and taking risk that is calculated and strategic. In 2007, 8, 9, there was a disconnect that you actually could work as a full-on practicing lawyer, law firm, provide full customer service from your house. That was a novel concept at the time. There was hesitation from clients to take on a lawyer who was working out of their home office and had no building. It doesn't matter that they never went to the building. They had a building and it looked big and it was impressive and it was downtown. People have different views. It's a stodgy profession that is slow to change, as we see. If you follow law tech, lawyers are very slow to take up changes. Look how long it took lawyers to get rid of law library. It's a slow moving profession and it was too radical for much of the profession. By the time 2020 came around, we'd already been in business for 12 years, full on virtual, no offices. The big change really for any of us was having family and children at home. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where the big issue is, will people come back? People have gotten used to it. It's going to be fascinating to see how the post-COVID working world unfolds 1 year ago, that was absolutely unheard of. There's going to be a couple things. It's getting people to come back. And then, of course, there's the whole panoply of how do you work in a post-pandemic environment. Privacy is not dissimilar in a sense. I think of it as this crazy quilt of risk, which is it's hard to categorize. It changes sometimes daily. So you hire the best technologists you can. You have them stay abreast of what the risks are. You have really good technology and you monitor. We recently had a client who was hacked. Came to the attention of a partner that her client got hacked. She immediately told the managing partner. So there's step one. The managing partner calls me, hey, client got hacked. What do we do? Quick, corral the troops. Does it involve us? No, it was a hack directly into their system. Okay, so you go through an analysis. There's nothing for us per se to do. It just happens to be somebody we know. Explore what happened to the extent we knew. We were working on a transaction, lots of documents, lots of emails, big bills. Okay, so bad people on the dark web have our name, IP coordinates. They know we're lawyers. They know we have sensitive information. Next step, then you double check your systems to make sure there's no intrusions and tell IT to make sure the firewall's safe, keep an extra eye out to the extent they can. I don't know that you can do a whole lot more, to be perfectly honest. The moral of the story there is be alert, have information flow quickly to the right people at the right time, and then act defensively as best you can. You always try to avoid lawsuits. If you are paying a lawyer to litigate a case, you're losing, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes you have to litigate, sometimes you have no choice, sometimes you have to enforce your rights, and I understand that. But generally speaking, from a defensive standpoint, you want to avoid getting sued by anybody if you can. Turning it to the court system, yeah, I think it's just the litigators in our firm and the folks I talk to really is just in many ways ground to a halt, certainly in your early days of the pandemic. And if you think about just the volume of cases that go through the system and the efforts of the judiciary to triage, I think it was a serious problem. You would have thought that there was a run to alternative dispute resolution during the pandemic. It's like, okay, fine, the courts are jammed, let's just mediate. We have spent, as a firm that started and was structured full on virtual, we've been thinking about the cyber risk aspects and practice risk aspects of operating virtually for years. And so we've worked through that. And it's interesting to watch now the legal industry wrestle with the same things. There definitely are issues. People have different technology. We very early on enforced rules that nobody else could use your laptop or your work computers. But it's different practicing law online than it is in person. There's no question about it. One of the things that'll happen post-COVID is you'll have a mix, just like employees going back into the workforce. People like it. And it works. It's just a fact. There will be varying degrees of virtual practice going forward. Can you do training remotely? I can tell you unequivocally, it can be done because we do it and it is successful. That's not to say it's easy. It has its challenges. It has its differences. I think back, what would I have done? What did I value about my earliest years? I valued going down the hall, and it's different to walk down the hall and ask questions. So I think it's a challenge. One of the biggest risks of starting this business in 2008 was, how do you keep people together? 2008 was WebEx days. There was no Zoom. Zoom didn't exist. And so there was a ferocious effort, which continues to this day, to keep people connected. And so we don't take connection and culture for granted. We affirmatively have to try to build it. So that's one answer. People like working remotely. People like the flexibility of not having to come into the office, making their own hours. There's a lot of folks, as we learned in the pandemic, what keeps me up at night in our system, it's the things that I can't see. Generally speaking, I know what my partners are doing. I know what kind of business is coming in the firm. I would say cyber risk keeps me up at night. You can do all of these best practices, two-factor authentication, but at the end of the day, if somebody wants to get you, they'll probably get you. That's probably the biggest thing that worries me.
David Jargiello, everybody. David, thank you so very much. And thanks, of course, to our friends at Joinder for supporting this discussion series on empowering engagement. It's really been a privilege.
Thank you for having me.